Hey y'all, FatMan here. We got some good grub there. Some eggs, some fried potatoes, and some toast. No meat. Kind of weird for me, but no meat. But I'm going to eat my breakfast and I'll get back with you in a couple of minutes. Hey y'all, FatMan's back. Ate my breakfast like a big boy. Push that out of the way, I still have to go and do dishes now. But I was going to have Guy Smiley over this morning, but he had some other stuff that he had to take care of, so, you know, there's more important things than having breakfast with the Fat Man. Got my fresh cup of coffee, which my wife made this morning, so it's actually not too bad. Wanted to kind of cover something in my eye. Wanted to cover a little bit about just kind of an update. Been doing some garden videos. We don't have a big garden, we just got a little bit going on, just so we can have some fresh veggies and stuff. I'm working on planning, trying to do some like a prepper's cookbook kind of a deal. And I want to cover some dehydrating, making meals with dehydrated food, using stuff that you have stored to make good, nutritious meals. I was reading online of a gentleman that decided he was going to take some of the freeze-dried, prepackaged stuff, and he was going to try to live on it for a month. He was doing this under doctor supervision, so he was completely safe about it. But he had eating nothing but the freeze-dried food. He had labs done before he started, and everything was all well within normal limits. 17 days in, he noticed he wasn't feeling real well. Went in and had his labs done again, and found that there were a lot of the numbers were off the chart, kind of crazy high. His blood pressure was way up, things like that. Personally, I have high blood pressure. I'm on medication for it. Without that medication, I would be continuously having migraines due to that high blood pressure. So all my cooking and stuff, I take all of that into account. I don't use a lot of salt. I don't eat a lot of processed foods. I try to keep things as natural as I can, if you will. So I try to use fresh ingredients in everything. I know how to make my own noodles. My wife is really good at it. I'm kind of a beginner, but I know how to make them. And they're not too bad. They can actually be really good once they're dried properly. Dehydrating foods, when you catch something on sale at the store, you know, tomatoes are on sale, buy some tomatoes. Buy a whole flat of them if you want to, and can them. You can can them, you can dehydrate tomatoes, you can sun-dry tomatoes. You can sun-dry tomatoes and it doesn't cost you a dime to do it. The sun does all the work for you. You want to do it on a day that doesn't have particularly high humidity. In Minnesota here, this time of year, our temperatures have been in the upper 80s and into the lower 90s, and the humidity's kind of been high the last week or so. It rained last night, so hopefully the humidity will be down a little bit today. Temps are supposed to be in the mid to upper 80s. And while I can survive the heat if I have to and drink a lot of fluids, I really don't care for it. And I thank the Lord that I have air conditioning here in town. We didn't have air on the farm. Our house was situated such that we had a lot of trees on the back side of the house, so in the afternoon, the hot afternoon sun, the trees were shading the house. And that was really a blessing in disguise. But those are some of the things that you can consider, when you're prepping. You're probably not going to have electricity. Air conditioning will be something that you will not have. And there's ways, in Minnesota here, our extremes, we will generally have 2 weeks in the winter where the temperature doesn't get above zero. So, just for an idea, we're talking about your freezer temperatures and not getting above freezer temperatures. A lot of times we usually will be around in that, above zero range, below freezing but above zero. But we usually have a couple of weeks get really cold, and in the summertime we'll have a couple of weeks that just get really hot and humid. And so far this year has been just really, really weird, because we've gone from days when it was 50 degrees to a day or two later breaking the 100-degree mark and then coming back down into the 50s again. So our weather can really get kind of weird here in Minnesota. And this is one of those years where it's just been kind of goofy. We've had a lot of rain, a lot of moisture, a lot of late snow. We've had really late snow. There was snow on the ground for my daughter's birthday in May. So that's not normal here in Minnesota, and it just happened that way. Everything is late getting planted, so everybody's hoping for a late winter, so that we can continue to grow food, and our gardens will produce what we need them to produce. Like I said, our garden is small. We're kind of experimenting a little bit this year. Normally, we don't plant corn. The nutritional value of corn versus the space that it takes doesn't justify planting corn. There isn't a lot of nutritional value in corn. It's a good source of starch, but I can get my starch from the potatoes, which have a better nutritional value and require less care. Rabbits don't go for potatoes. They don't try to eat the blossoms off the potatoes or anything like that. So the potatoes, I don't know if they just taste bad or what, but they're a good source of starch. They can be stored, as long as they're kept in a cool, dry place, they can be stored for 3 or 4 months, as long as it's done properly. Same with stuff like onions. As long as it's stored in a cool, dry place, it can be stored for a while. And there's a lot of other foods that can be done that way and stored naturally. They don't necessarily need to be canned. Onions can be dehydrated as well and stored much longer, as long as they're stored properly, stored in an airtight container, that sort of thing. There's a lot of tools available now, vacuum packers and things like that. I don't have any of that, so I'm going to be doing things kind of the old-fashioned way, if you will. I'll be storing things. I'll be canning some potatoes. Guy Smiley is going to help us out a little bit. He's pretty good with canning, and he cans quite a bit himself. So he's going to help us out a bit. We're going to learn how to can meat. We are going to be canning a lot of veggies. We're going to try to, if it all works out, I'm going to try to cover pressure canning and water bath canning both, along with like jams and jellies, how those are canned, because they're done with a paraffin seal as opposed to the water bath or pressure canning methods. My wife likes to make syrups, her own syrup out of fruits, because she's a fruit syrup kind of gal. Dehydrating, of course, I've got a couple of very inexpensive dehydrators, just to show that you don't need to buy a $300 dehydrator to dehydrate your food. You can do it on a $30 unit from Walmart. If Walmart sells them, I don't know. But the ones that I have are very inexpensive. They were $20 or $30. I don't remember exactly. I've got 2 different types, but they are both forced warm air. and that's how they dehydrate. It takes time to dehydrate anything, but we're going to check it out. We're going to see how it all works out, and hopefully that will go really well. I know they work. I've dehydrated things before. Really, there isn't a lot more that I need to cover this morning. I've got a couple of book reviews coming up from a couple of Zion Prepper's books that I've read. I'll leave a link to him down below. Another channel I'd like to recommend is Joe and Zach's Survival channel. They've got some really good information on gardening and raising meat rabbits. He's working with goats now, as is J0, which I'll link both of those channels down below too. They've been really good sources of information for me, and my prepping aspects of things. J0 looks at being on his own, not being dependent on anybody else or dependent on the government or anything as much as possible, which I think is admirable at the least. Zion Prepper gives some really good information in his books, which I'll cover in the reviews. The Joe and Zach Survival channel covers a lot of other, he does canning, making syrup. There's just a wealth of information. There's so much information on YouTube these days that it's really silly if you can't figure out what you're doing, if you can't go to YouTube and get more information. I don't know what you're doing wrong. But we've got herbs and stuff planted too, so I'm going to be drying some herbs. Because there's, in a survival situation, there's nothing worse than eating crappy food. So, and I've learned over the years with my high blood pressure to stay away from salt. Salt is not a seasoning. Salt is a flavor enhancer more. And it doesn't take a great deal of salt to enhance the flavor. So I've imposed a low salt diet on myself. My wife likes her salt, but she doesn't have high blood pressure either. But, just like pepper, there's different kinds of peppers. And if you I like to use what's called a pepper medley of black, red, yellow, and white peppercorns. And I'll put those mix them up real good and dump them into a pepper mill, and I'll just grind my own pepper. And it's really, really good that way because it gives you different flavors. It's not just a black pepper. So there's a lot of different things that can be done, and I'm going to be trying to do some prepared meals, and I may even do a cookbook out of the thing. We'll see, a small one. But we'll see how that goes. Call it the Prepper's Cookbook or something. And, that's going to be it for today. Everybody, stay safe, God bless, and have a great day.